Welcome to this easy to follow foiling application for blonde hair. This is going to be an easy application. Here we are pre-sectioned 6 sections, and I'm starting the foiling process in the back. Now I'm going to be working up the left side before I get to the right side and keeping the hair I'm grabbing fairly consistent. I am using a lightener with a 10 volume for this entire application. I know that my natural level is about a level 6 to 7, but very fine hair, and she's going to lighten very easily. So I'm really working the product in as I start my process here. I will be taking consistent sectioning throughout this entire technique. And when we get to the very front, we're going to switch things up a little bit. But we're going to be taking about 1/4 inch sections and kind of weaving the comb in through the section to pull the hair out. I'm not taking teeny tiny little strands. I'm taking a nice decent size to have a little bit of impact. We do want her to feel bright. She's got a few inches of outgrowth, and we really want to make her feel close to a springtime blonde. I want to get as close to the scalp as possible without going on the scalp, and we don't want it to be bleeding into or out of the foil. So I'll be very gentle right at the very top where the base of the foil lives. I'm careful not to squish my product out, but I do keep my foils very consistent, and I like to call them tight and constructed so that they don't slip. Again, I'm taking 1/4 inch sections and working up the back of the head. Pre-sectioning out the head before you start this process is going to make things flow so much smoother, and you're going to have a really good guide ahead mapped out. Whenever we are trying to figure things out as we go, it always takes longer, and the consistency or balance of color doesn't quite do it. So by pre-sectioning out, I know exactly how long it's going to take me because I know that I'm just going to execute once I get going. Some good tips are to keep your supplies handy. Make sure you have plenty of clips. And I am one to know that I'll probably be using 2 bowls of lightener. So I will want to have 2 bowls on my tray, mix the first batch, but not mix the second one until I run out. Remember, lightener does have a life expand. So after 30 minutes, 40 minutes, it stops working at its maximum strength. This is something that I think is really important when it comes to lightening, not to pre-mix any of your colors until it's time to use them. Now, in this case, we're only using a bleach lightener and nothing else. She really wants to be brighter. She's got literally a natural level about 7. It's looking pretty dark in this video here, but she's pretty light and very fine. But she was a natural blonde as a child, so we want to pump her up a little bit. Now we've approached the right-hand side. We ran out of space, and we're going to be coming up this entire quadrant at the same time. I love to be balanced. I like to start my sectioning equally on both sides. When the hair naturally lays down, you're going to have a little bit of dimension throughout the back. And again, she is previously has highlights, but she's looking really dark with a few inches of outgrowth. So we're going to be giving her a little bit more brightness. Now, again, just like the other side, I'm going to be keeping my sectioning consistent and doing about 1/4 inch sectionings in between the foils. And as you can see here, I'm just organically picking up with my comb the hair, and this is definitely useful for me to keep it consistent throughout the head. Now, when I lay my lightener down, I'm careful not to lay it all the way to the top. I kind of like to feather it up to the base. Using this technique gives a softness throughout the hair, and the lines are not straight. It's at a diagonal, so it's going to have a very natural flow when she's washed it and blow dried it. And we're kind of coming up the back of the curvature of the head up into the crown area. Now, if you kind of get off base, just look at how many foils are on the left side so you know how many foils are on the right side to keep the balance. I'm not using any low lighting or any other product except for the lightener, and this is going to keep her very bright. And then I will control the tone at the very end with whatever gloss I choose. But she's going to be a nice, beautiful, traditional, bright blonde, and it's going to be fabulous. As you can see here, I'm making sure I don't overlap. I'm pulling out some of that previously lightened hair, so I just kind of scoot them over to the side. And again, coming up the back curvature of the head at a diagonal, keeping those sections in between the foils consistent. And when I'm picking up the hair, I'm doing kind of like a finer weave, but I'm doing a lot of them, so there's going to have a nice blend. And I might do a couple heavier ones mixed in to get a little extra pop here and there. But for the most part, I want them to be kind of softer. As we are coming across the crown of the head here, I'm still using my diagonal back sectioning, and I'm going to foil this entire section until we run out of hair. Now I am using a zigzag on the scalp to pick up the hair, which is creating brightness, but it's not a perfect slice. So we'll have some depth as well. It's important when we come across this section of the crown not to have flat foils or slices, I should say. So where the hair naturally separates doesn't have some weird bright piece. This is going to keep it very blended, very organic. And as the hair grows out, it won't be stripy or funky. It'll be very natural. As you can see, we're hitting the very top. I'm taking these zigzag sections with a little bit more space in between them to create a little bit more depth at the crown while still having enough brightness. Sometimes this can get very tedious, so we just have to go with the flow, not rush it, just work your pace. And you get to have a little creativity when you're picking up some of the strands. I do not believe that every single strand has to be the exact same size. I think naturally, organically in nature, it's good to have highs and lows and a little extra pop here and there and a little depth somewhere else. Now, as you can see, we did this entire back section and now we're heading to the front. Now, right here specifically along the hairline, I'm going to see how my baby fine weave is right on the hairline. I never want to put a flat foil right on the hairline. That one I always want to make it kind of like a baby light. So it's really gentle when she pulls her hair back and it's grown out, a month or two. It doesn't look weird and kind of not natural on the face. So foil one is going to be soft. The second foil here, I'm doing closer than I did the previous sections. And as you can tell, I'm leaving out a little bit, but these foils are about a 1/4 inch apart. I'm going as close to the scalp as possible, feathering into the base of the foil so it's gentle. And this is going to create that brightness around the face. I'm not looking for a lot of dimension around the face. This is where my clients want to be brighter. And on really fine hair, the hair naturally lightens up here. So this is where I like to showcase, that really pretty face framing blonde. Now the third foil back, I'm going to go back to my 1/4 inch foils. So the first couple I do closer together, and then I get a little bit more spacing apart from my foils going this direction. Again, we're keeping this in a diagonal back, which will create a natural flow to it when the hair lays in its natural form, and it will soften up any harsh lines around the face. As you can see right here, I definitely am showcasing that zigzag that I'm using, kind of an organic zigzag. Now, the differences would be if you were to pick up that entire slice and then break the slice with a zigzag, but I like to zigzag off of the head. But the diagonal back is key for it to looking very natural. Straight lines don't work in nature, and straight lines don't look great when you want to have a natural looking hairstyle or color. This is going to create more than just sun-kissed. It's going to create a overall dimensional blonde. Because her natural level is about a 6.5, 7, she naturally lightens up in the sun. So right now we're looking at her really dark base, and we are going to definitely brighten this client up. See, by pre-sectioning, I've got my map set in stone here, and as I'm moving the side of the head, it makes it very simple. Now we're going to the very front on that left side of the head, and again, this is the hairline, and it's very soft. I baby fine weaved it out, but it's almost like doing a slice, but it's not. This is going to create a lot of brightness like we were talking about and having more impact on the base around the face. Now I'm not taking any hair out on this. It's a perfect slice right back to back with that front foil. This is going to create a lot of impact and a definite amount of brightness, but it won't look super stripy and it won't look too heavy. It'll be just right. We do want to have some boldness in the front. So we're not leaving any hair out for the first about 3 foils here. They're all going to be back to back. So the first foil was a fine weave on the hairline, and the 2 after it are slices. Again, you want to make sure you feather it up to the top so it's nice and soft. And one good tip to remember is when you're foiling, don't push your lightener out of the foil. Keep it gentle and soft so you don't get any bleed marks. Now this fourth foil is no space in between, but just weaved out because we're going to start softening this transition here into the back of the head. So that boldness is in the front and it's a little bit more gentle in the back. By doing this, again, you're going to have more foils in the front of the head. It's going to be brighter and lighter, which a lot of people really like to have that brightness around their face. But it's also going to create a softness in the back so the grow out won't be like a bright bleach touch up blonde. It's going to be a lot more natural. And then we're going to start to do more 1/4 inch sections after these foils by weaving throughout the rest of the section here. As you can see, when I am highlighting the hair, I am not necessarily painting the lightener all the way through to the ends because I don't want to overlap and cause a lot of damage or breakage. This is something that I find to be very important when it comes to my clients and their needs. I want them feeling good. I don't want their hair to be terrible. I want to be in the maximum best health as possible. So I will take my time. I will weave out those pre-lightened pieces however long it takes. I am willing to do to make sure my client leaves with healthy hair. So you just don't want to put the lightener on the previously lightened hair. Otherwise, it could break, it could get very damaged, it could give a chemical haircut, all the things that we would like to avoid. Now, as I'm working on these quadrants, pre-sectioning the hair is so key. As you can tell, I'm having no problems with my sectioning. I have my roadmap ready to go. I'm just executing the application, being mindful of my sectioning. Knowing my sectioning makes sense because it's been pre-mapped out. This is also all diagonal back. There's no flat line. So coming across the head this direction, this diagonal back, is going to give a very natural fall. It will not be stripy. When you come straight across the top of the head, it is more likely to be stripy. And these days, we want to avoid having ugly, harsh lines. I'd never want to rely on having to use a toner to fix something. I would rather the application process be done and executed in a way that I already know the results, so I don't have to go back and fix any mistakes because I didn't know how it was going to look. This is my tried and true foiling application that I use. It is easy to recreate. It is easy to add in lowlights, highlights, tweaking the color from brighter to darker using this foiling pattern. I teach all of my stylists to do this. By using this formulation, you're going to move through the head very quickly. Now we're here back on the right side of the head, and we're going to be using the same technique. We're going to be using this very fine, soft baby lights on the hairline to create gentleness when they pull their hair back, just like the sun would do, without any harsh lines. The second foil here is going to be close, and it's going to be weaved fairly close foils, closer than we did in the back, so about half the distance of those back foils. Again, this is for high impact blonding around the face. If you wanted to create a higher impact blonde where it's almost like doing a full color from base to end, the whole head, but you want a softer grow out, then just make those foils closer together. The closer the foils, the more foils, the brighter, but also you lose some dimension. By having some foils farther apart, you get a little bit more dimension organically. And because we're only using lightener with her natural color, we're not adding that third tone in. But if you would like to use multiple tones to create more color dimension, you could easily be switching back and forth between a bleach bowl and maybe a high lift or level 910 in color to create a little bit more control and not as light white blonde. This actual application process is literally so useful for many different ways of coloring the hair. You could easily go back through and add some low lights if you want to take them down. It's just a easy to follow application, sectioning, and process. This technique is one of my favorites. As we move up this quadrant, as you can see, it's diagonal back. It becomes more triangular and the sections get smaller. This is exactly what we want. We are thinking about the left side of the head and the right side of the head and the balance. So if your section before you even execute any of your technique is mapped out, you know exactly how many foils from the left side and the right side to create the perfect amount of balance. Now we're on the very last section and we're back to the front of the hairline. Now again, I'm doing a very fine weave on that front hairline just to create a softness on the face. First foil down, make it as tight as you can and get as close to the top of the foil as possible to give them the longevity. This is not a lived in color. This is a beautiful, bright, traditional blonding technique. Again, the second foil is back to back. It's a slice. There is no space between the foils. It is back to back foils. Again, this will create that brightness that we want in the very front. The fringe area will be very light, very beautiful. It's cool to mix up your foiling technique throughout the head. Now, again, in the front of the face, I want these foils closer together back to back because I want it to be lighter and brighter. But in the back of the head, I don't want her to feel like she has to come in right away. It's going to give her a lot of time to grow out. And if she wanted to come back in just for a couple of foils around the face as an in-between service and not have to do a full partial highlight or full color again, we could add in 6 or 7 foils and her color will last a few months longer. The grow out will be very soft. Again, this is back-to-back foils in the front. So these are 3 back-to-back foils. And as we hit this fourth foil, it's going to be close together. It's going to be weaved. And then after that, we will start the bigger sections again. I should say slightly bigger, more distance between the foils. The consistency between these foils from the left and the right side, I remember what I do on each side, so I know the front hairline is consistent. I know how many foils back I change up my technique, where I go from slicing to weaving again. But hey, if you wanted to do a slice and then a weave for more impact, this is where the creativity is in your hands. Now I am trying to blend her old color in. It looks like it had been 6, 7 months between her last hair color, and she was feeling pretty dark. So when she leaves today, she's going to be much lighter than when she walked in. What's great about this foiling pattern also, if you're a slower foiler, you can see how clean my foils are. So if I needed to go and rinse the back of the head out because those foils are done processing and the color that I want, I can always pull those out, rinse out the back of the head while the front is still developing to get the desired results I'm looking for. Because I was working from the back of the head and then the front of the head, that allows me to do that. But if you're a quicker foiler, you could always do this same pattern, but start from the front of the head and do the back of the head last. That is always an option. I do many of my colors this way, but I also do many where I start in the front using the same technique. As you can see, I've had to not think about my sectionings at all because they've already been mapped out and they are consistent diagonal back. This is going to create a lot of boldness on the top of the head, which she is going to love. But say you wanted a more lived in feeling, you could easily go back and tap the base down with a gloss to create a softer grow out for your client. I tend to start out really bright with my clients, and then I tell them for saving money reasons to come back in 2 months, and then I'll just root tap them so they can get another few months out of their color and it doesn't look like they've got roots. My clients are adaptable. They don't need to look exactly the same all the time. And so it really helps to them save their pocketbook and also look good while only getting their hair done twice a year. And as you can see, I'm getting to that last little triangle in the very back. It's been consistent this entire time. It's going to be soft. Again, my weave here towards this back crown, there's a little bit of space, a little heavier and lighter, just to create a brightness and also a little bit of depth right in that crown.